Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, I guess minor spoilers for Barret's backstory in case you don't know. This comes from DualShockers and it's titled, "I'd love a black Final Fantasy character that isn't just comic relief." This article got some traction as a lot of people started to dogpile the journalist here, asking them if he even played a Final Fantasy game to have such an opinion in the first place. If you actually read the article, you'd quickly find out that yes, this journo has indeed played the original game back in the early 2000s. And they've also played games like Final Fantasy XIII, which has Saz, another black character, who, by the way, looks a lot like Lionel Richie. I don't know why, but I just figured I'd point that out. I don't know how to segue out of that observation in a way that makes sense, but the gist here is that Final Fantasy apparently always depicts black characters as comic relief, which I don't agree with. Barret, especially in my opinion, is one of the best characters in Final Fantasy VII. And that's saying something considering how solid the entire cast is. Barret, as anyone who's played 7 knows, he's a father to a cute little munchkin named Marlene. And he's also a revolutionary fighter who fights back against Shinra in hopes of saving the planet from their industrial catastrophic agenda. He's also very funny, lighthearted at times, and acts like the big brother or even father of the entire group. Barret also, in my opinion, has one of the best designs in video games. He's instantly iconic with his big green pants, badass ripped jacket, and his huge bulging biceps. Not to mention his machine gun arm is easily, in my opinion, one of the greatest video game weapon ideas for a character ever. And that's not even including how Barret plays in Rebirth especially. Barret is literal god tier in my experience. Especially if you're playing the game on hard mode, trust me, Barret pretty much never left my team if I could help it. The man does insane damage, his survivability is through the roof, and his ability to track enemies with his attacks from afar, not to mention his amazing synergy attacks. Dude, Barret is the full package. But beyond that, when it comes to his actual story, like every other team member, his origin is marked with tragedy. And he goes from being this humble, good man who mines for ore to making a deal with the devil and losing everything. And personally, for me anyway, I connect with Barret on an emotional level too, since his backstory involves another character named Dyne, who is Barret's best friend. Dyne lost his mind after the Coral Reactor disaster, and Barret lost his wife as well. Barret was sifting through the wreckage and was unable to find Dyne or his wife, but Barret was able to save Marlene, who is Dyne's daughter. And Barret raises Marlene as an undying devotion to his best friend's memory. So when Barret locates Dyne during the Gold Saucer arc, he discovers a man who was all but a shell of himself. And this story in particular for me resonates greatly, as in real life I lost my own father to alcoholism. And seeing this man my entire life who was indestructible and strong, capable of anything, was nothing short of a positive male role model in my life. I mean, everything I am, from my opinions to my sense of humor you see on this channel, you can thank my dad for that. But he got addicted to alcohol, and I watched as my father slowly but surely succumbed to the demon in that bottle, and it eventually destroyed him. And when I was presented with the story of Barret and Dyne in Rebirth, yeah sure I beat the original game, but obviously here it's more realized and it hit me like a train. The only moment in Rebirth that made me tear up for a second was this sequence with Barret and Dyne. Cause Dyne to me was like my father, this great man who was ruined by something he couldn't control anymore. And seeing Barret come to realize that the friend he knew his whole life, like I did with my father, was gone, it hit me where I live. That to me anyway is real representation, because clearly I'm not a 6'5" black guy with a machine gun arm. Yet, I connect to Barret deeply on a personal level, and I love his character even more now with what Rebirth did with him. Because Barret reminds me of myself, that when shit hits the fan and the going gets tough, we don't crumble under pressure. Having paid all my dad's bills and the house is on top of my own while taking care of my mom and my dogs, all while working constantly during his alcoholic episodes, I never let it bring me down. Because I knew if I gave up, if I let it get to me, there was no one who could pick up the torch if I dropped it. So I suffered, I endured, and I pushed until eventually came brevity and a moment of solace. My father would eventually pass away in his sleep from a heart attack induced by alcoholism, and when he died, I didn't feel anything but hollowness. And when I see Barret staring at Dyne and knowing the great man he once knew was no longer there but a shadow of what remained, that hit me, dude. So when someone says Barret is not good representation or he's just comic relief, nah, I disagree wholeheartedly. Barret is absolutely one of the best characters in Final Fantasy period, and he's someone I identify with on a personal level. He's a troubled man, with the weight of the world on his shoulders, but he knows that if he gives up, there's no one else that can do it. So like Atlas, Barret carries that indecipherable weight, and he sometimes cracks a joke, or Yuffie annoys him with her shenanigans. But that's what life is. It's not all light and dark, and I think Barret perfectly represents this. If anything, Barret is exactly what more characters need to be like. His race is never brought up, and nobody cares that he's black in the game either. His identity and characteristics of being a heroic badass and a father figure, that shines brighter than anything beyond just his skin color. So we don't need characters that aren't like Barret. We actually need characters that are more like him than anything. And while we're at it, since Fran from Final Fantasy XII is also dark-skinned, I wouldn't mind some more dark-skinned beauties in sci-fi games and fantasy either. Cause Fran is a 10 out of 10 design, just no notes, sublime. But whether it's weird consulting groups being stupid or journals trying to say Barret and others aren't enough for representation, it's all nonsense. People are more than their skin color, and I think we need to realize that and embrace it and stop pigeonholing ourselves like these morons do instead. Well, what do you think about all of this? Let me know in the comments. As always, like, subscribe, and share this video if you enjoyed it. Thanks to my patrons, and thank you for watching. Barret is the GOAT, and I'll see you in the next one.